This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Now, the one conversation that I've had over and over again, whoever you may speak to in the Asian community, that is about dual citizenship. A lot of people often come up to me very passionately and tell us about how passionately they feel for both countries. They say their heart beats for India and their heart beats for the UK and want to be citizens of both countries. There are lots of emotional reasons behind this, but of course there are legal and constitutional reasons behind why this still hasn't happened. Tell me, sir, would you want dual citizenship to be introduced? Would you want India to recognize and kind of keep up with the times and tell people who live abroad from the diaspora to say, okay, we understand what you're doing, and you can be an Indian citizen and you can be an American citizen or a British citizen or any other country where you work?
You know, definitely. I think dual citizenship has its advantages, and most of all, you know, it's a very emotional attachment that the people in the diaspora will further enhance with the country. And PIO, OCI cards were a step in the right direction. The PIO nuke scheme is definitely a bolder step. But I think it's time now, and I think this government will probably start.
Do you have a PIO card yourself?
I had a PIO card, then turned it into an OCI card, and now it's going to be renamed and turned into a third card. So to avoid all this, you know, it'd be best achieved, I think, through a constitutional debate in Parliament, which will probably head us in that direction. But I think it'll be a good step.
And you'd like to be an American citizen and an Indian citizen?
I am an American citizen.
You are an American.
And I have an OCI card, and believe me, life has become very easy with that OCI card. And now it'll be good for the PIOs too. But I think if we had that dual citizenship, it just makes things much more simpler.
And very clear cut.
Very clear cut.
Okay. What about you, sir? You're a British citizen. You live in this country. Tell me, I mean, what would you do with would you like to be an Indian citizen?
Yes, definitely, because I'll give you an experience of mine. I used to work for a bank, and there were a lot of Indian people from the first and second generation who've come here in the 60s and 70s. They're still sticking on to their Indian passports because they don't want to give them up. So if dual citizenship is introduced, a lot of people will...
In a heartbeat, right?
Yes, definitely, yes. And it makes life easier for them also, because for them to travel to about 102 countries will be without a visa. But right now they have to queue up, go to every embassy to get a visa.
So they're traveling on an Indian passport.
And that helps business for India and UK both. So I will definitely support dual citizenship.
Okay, well, what about you, sir? Why do you agree that this should be introduced? I mean, before we were rolling camera, you said that you're kind of, a bit unsure about this. Tell me why.
There are reservations for some people who do not want it, but in general, it's a good idea because it's not the first time or first country. There are many other countries that this occur. At least 16 countries with the United States have dual citizenship, so it's not a problem. It should be something that's to the heart and connected to an emotional attachment. It will also erase a certain part of the bureaucracy in India where you have surrender passports, where if you become a citizen of another country,
you don't have to surrender any passport anymore. Okay. And would you want to be an Indian citizen? And would you, before we start rolling, you said that you're quite a few generations removed. Is that?
I would not want to be an Indian citizen because I'm not. I'm an American citizen, born in Guyana, but my national loyalty, my loyalty to the country where I live is paramount. Okay.
So even if it was to be introduced, you won't apply?
I would not qualify.
You would not qualify. Okay. But Baroness, tell me, before I ask you about all the policy and all of that, on a more personal level, I know, we've spoken many times before, and I know your heart beats for India as well, as does for so many other people who live in this country. Tell me, at a more personal level, if there was a kind of dual citizen thing, should the government here push the Indian government more on this particular issue?
I think what we've got to really look at is the generations coming on, and it's already been mentioned about first and second generation. I think the concentration has really got to be, how do we see the world progressing? We're all global citizens, and do we see our relationship with India getting to the extent where third, fourth, fifth generation born British young people from the Indian community feel that they are close enough to wanting citizenships with India. So I think there is a debate to be had. And I think, whilst when you talk to first, second generation, it's a very different debate. And I think going forward, we've got to have a much more informed debate. What would it mean? How will it materialise? And I know we have dual nationalities with a number of other countries, but ultimately the debate has got to be, is it going to benefit us building the relationship, or is the relationship already strong enough? And what do we expect out of the relationship going forward? So the debate's got to be had.
Correct. Also, do you think, in a way, given the way national borders have become so irrelevant over the last 2 or 3 decades, trade has made this world a really small place. Do you think visa systems in general keep up with this shrinking world?
Well, I think the visa system highlights some of the issues of why we should have these sort of arrangements. But I do think that one thing that we also have is a world where there's a lot of discord at the moment. So having visas allows people to be seriously looked at. And we've got to be very, very careful. The world is in a place of turmoil, and so visas enable us to be able to sit back and reflect on people coming in and out of our countries. So that is a serious issue. But I think ultimately going forward we have got to see, and you're absolutely right, the borders are beginning to get less visible, and trade and commerce is becoming much more visible. But ultimately, it is what the people think that they're going to get as a net benefit.
And actually, the one thing that you pointed out, let me just take this to everyone else before we wrap. This is really interesting. I mean, depends on what generation you come from. I mean, first generation immigrant, second generation. It depends, how close you feel to India and whether you really want this, want citizenship of two countries. Reflect a bit for me about that.
But let me talk about the present and the future versus the past. I became an American citizen. I would like to hold my Indian citizenship. I have two sons who would love to remain Indian citizens as much as American citizens.
Are you sure? Are you sure it's not you telling them to do that?
No. Believe me, they have experienced India enough. No, the point is that, look, Prime Minister Modi says that he's skilling India and he's creating human capital that is going to be working around the world, mingling entrepreneurs, innovators, setting up businesses. To these people, it will be another element of flexibility because we are creating a completely new breed of Indian diaspora.
Okay, and before I speak to the other panelists, tell me, you very briefly, you spoke a bit about this whole emotional element, the whole emotional connect. Tell me a bit about that. I mean, why do you feel so emotionally connected to India? You've lived now in America, you're a naturalized citizen.
Every one of us, it's a saying which I think has been said and reiterated over and over again. See, it's very difficult when you come from a culture as deep-rooted and ancient and so deep as Indian. Then it's very difficult to take that Indian out of you. And India is the only place that gives.
I'm almost tempted to agree with you with a head wiggle with that.
India doesn't get out of your system.
Absolutely. And tell me, sir, for you, have you grown up in this country?
I actually, yes, I am. So I came to this country in 2002, and believe me, the change that I've seen in the Indian diaspora from 2002 to now is phenomenal.
Tell me, what was the whole experience like, giving away your Indian passport for? I mean, is it just a mechanical change of travel documents, or is it something more than that?
It breaks your heart.
What does it do?
Yes.
It breaks your heart.
I actually sat home. I took the day off from work. I sat at home and I looked at my Indian passport in one hand and I looked at the British passport in the other hand. My wife came home and she asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, I've lost something. I have gained something, but I have actually lost something. And I would love to have that thing back, because the Indianness, as he rightly said, you can take us out of India, but you cannot take the Indianness out of us.
Cheated. I kept my passport with me for a couple of years till the embassy called me and said, "Mr. Gupta, you have to put it back in." Which was...
Okay. And very briefly, so you spoke a bit about this, that, for people who are now removed by, 3 or 4 generations, for them, they feel very not so connected to India anymore, that they'd like to become citizens.
The PIO card is the thing that applies to us. It's a very valuable tool, and the lifelong visa now. It makes it very attractive. It also removes some of the obstacles in applying for visas and the long lines and all the complications of the consular services. But the emotional attachment is always there because we are part of that heritage from way back, and you cannot take it out because we are part of this big tree with deep roots and many branches.
Okay. And apart from all the policy and everything, Baroness Verma, let me ask you: would you like to be a dual citizen? And before we rolled camera, we cracked a joke that if you were to contest, after your absolutely fantastic career here in the UK, if you were to go back and in Delhi, you were to contest elections there with your newly found Indian citizenship, would that be an option?
I'm not sure about contesting in Indian politics, but what I would say is that ever since I've been to India, I was 16 when I first went, I fell in love with the country of my birth. And I don't care whether I am a citizen by passport or not, but my inners belong to a place where my parents come from, my grandparents come from. And, I'm extremely proud of the rich history that I have a heritage to. So I'm not sure a passport will change that feeling. It's as was said, we have an emotional attachment. But I do think that going forward, maybe it's one of those things that we do need to look at seriously. Maybe there will be a time when the generations coming forward want to have that engagement without the hassle of feeling that they are divided by two countries. They belong to both.
Okay.
I think I belong to both.
Okay, and just to conclude, when I started my journalistic career, often editors would tell me that when politicians tell you that we're looking at this very seriously, that usually means that they're not looking at it at all. But of course, we know Baroness is different.
Listen. I've always been really candid in my views, and I think if you come into politics, which is why I probably wouldn't do very well in India, is because when I came into politics, the one thing I came to do was to actually change the perception of people coming in. So for me, it's a passion, and it's the same passion I have for my country of birth. I mean, I couldn't think of a better place to live next to UK, which is my home, to go back. And I go back to India, I feel it's home. It's another home for me, and the people there treat me as their own. So I think that's the thing that I don't want to lose.
Absolutely.